When light hits the eye and specifically goes to the retina, and I want to specifically say that we know that light that goes to the retina is hitting rods and cones, and those go to neurons, which then project back here to the occipital lobe, and that's where we actually can understand and visualize and see things. There is light that we see that we can describe. What I'm about to talk to you about is light that comes into the eye that goes to a completely different part of the brain, and it's not light that you're conscious of. It's light that you're unconscious of. This light that's coming into the eye is not going to rods and cones, but instead this thing called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. Now, these are ganglia. They are particularly in the inferior portion of the retina at the back of the eye, and that's important to understand because usually light that comes from the superior visual field when it hits the lens is going to be projected down into the inferior retina. So this is going to be stuff in the superior visual field. It is then projected to something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Now, this is the master clock. This is the portion of the brain that makes sure that everything is working in sync. When light comes in, it's telling the suprachiasmatic nucleus that it is daytime, that it is during the day, that this must be coming from the sun. This is how we are hardwired. And because of that, there is a specific neuron that shuts down production in the pineal gland of melatonin. Obviously, it's possible for you to be out of sync. So the question then becomes, how does the brain and the circadian rhythm inside your brain adjust to reality? So I want to show you how the circadian rhythm in your brain can be shifted one way or the other, depending on the external sources of light. So I want you to imagine that you're on a desert island, that you have no sort of extrinsic sources of light, and you're perfectly aligned. You can see here that the night of the circadian rhythm is actually aligned with night, which is reality, and also the daytime is perfectly aligned with reality, which is day. That's the ideal. In our situation, if we were to, for instance, expose our eyes to the screen or our iPhone or anything like that, what could happen is that we would start to expose our eyes to light at a time where we would not normally be experiencing light. And so what the circadian rhythm wants to do in that situation is it's thinking that it's still daytime. And as a result of that, it's going to shift itself over to that to encompass and capture that because it thinks that it's too early. And so you can see here very clearly that exposure to light at night after the sun goes down has a tendency to delay your circadian rhythm. Now, that can cause problems, as we talked about before, but the biggest problem that you might notice yourself consciously is that even though you're at night here, your circadian rhythm is not ready for sleep. And so you might actually get the symptom of insomnia. And also, similarly, it's day here at the beginning, and you're still in the middle of your sleep. And so you might get hypersomnia in the morning. And you can see here that it's important to understand that avoiding light, especially late in the circadian rhythm, after the sun has gone down before you go to bed, avoiding it can prevent this type of shifting from occurring. Interestingly also, is exposing your eyes to light here in the beginning of the day can help anchor your circadian rhythm and prevent it from sliding later and later because of viewing of light in the late hours. You'll notice that light is coming in and it's the inferior portion as we talked about. So it's really important to avoid bright light, especially high up in your visual field. So ceiling lights, things of that nature. I would say if you had to use lights, using lighting on the floor or using lighting low on the wall, those night light types of thing would be much better. Also realize that the peak sensitivity of those intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells are around 460 to 484 nanometers, which is basically in the blue section. Now, you may have heard of blue blockers and even programs on your screens and computers that can reduce the amount of blue light, because this is the type of light that specifically is going to excite those intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. It's any kind of light that's really going to stimulate it. It's just this blue light that seems to be the worst at stimulating those ganglion receptors. And remember, when they do, they're going to tell the suprachiasmatic nucleus, as we've shown here, to shut down melatonin production. And the point is that melatonin is the coolant that makes sure that the engine is running smoothly and that antioxidants are kept to a minimum. So you really want to have that melatonin production at night, and you don't want light shutting it down.